Good morning. I tried to aggregate the amount of information you could have heard today. We've never cooperated, so it looks that the presentation will be an aggregate of all the information we talked about. So we are going to talk about something that hasn't been mentioned yet. 52% of total housing share of the Slovak apartments, of the Slovak housing share is made of apartments in buildings. We will talk about offices and apartment buildings. I'm going to speak in Slovak, but the presentation is written in English. We will talk about the reduction of heat, of the energy production, and reduction of fossil fuels, also reduction of emissions, and how to increase the opportunity in job creation. And we will talk about the increase of comfort. Even the climate change says that the comfort will not be so easy. There are also some developers, so we will talk about investments too, how to change the whole idea to 2.7 billions of euros. These money can be reinvested, and there are the sources for that. We have to touch them, and we have to work with them. It's a tunnel mindset in this. So we will discuss it. My name is Ján Rapan. I'm a data scientist, and we have a really similar story as Mr. Siklienka. In a certain time, I realized that I don't like this business anymore, and I want to put something back to the society. So this is something I like, and I will share this information. So to understand what's the heat island, urban heat island, I'll try to explain some bases. Maybe you know it, maybe not. Maybe you will come to some new information. People love saunas. Saunas is a beautiful example of such an effect. They go inside through the door, they close the door, but what's the most important is the heat source. It emits the heat through a radiation, and the radiation has an impact to all surrounding objects. That's why we have the wood inside. So these materials that are in saunas, they work as they work. The first effect is, as you know, the heat on your skin. So it's a transmission through air, hot air convection effect, and the first time you sit on the board, it's quite hot, so it's the hot surface conduction effect, and it is transmittable and can be explained also in the concept of the urban heat islands. Therefore, people have enough of it, so they go somewhere where they can cool down. So although people love saunas, they have to cool down somewhere. And how does it work in the nature? We have a source of radiation for several years. It works. It sends us some watts depending on the surface of the earth, and we have enough greenery and enough water surfaces. These water surfaces are very bad conductors of heat. For example, in the summer, if there is 38 degrees and you step on alone, you don't heat up, you don't burn your feet. But if there's a sand, You know it from the beach. When you step on the sand, it's total burnout. Thanks God, we have an effect that is replacing the air conditioning. So it means that the greenery, the plants, they take the water from the root system and they try to put it outside. The soil itself wants to take the water out of the soil. So there is an effect of air conduction that the cold air masses go up and the heat masses go down. So it means that we have enough water, but we don't retain it. There are cities where there are surfaces we have to live in, we have to work in, and these surfaces are built up, and it's a total opposite of what's in the nature. They keep or capture the heat and don't capture the water. So it's all wrong. This is an image of thermal camera. As you can see, the build up areas have very bad color. So this is the effect of the urban heat islands. So we need to do something about it. So what are the good practices of really bad evapotranspiration? So these are the car park or unused surfaces, build-up surfaces. We know everything about what should we do about it. You heard many presentations. So why the hell it hasn't changed yet? We know about it for over 200 years that there is this effect. Over 200 years, and we are talking about 300,000 meters square of the surface. It's a shame. It's a shame for people. Unfortunately, we're very few people who are dealing with this. Why do we have so low amount of surfaces that are green or green roofs? Try to find a response. The first thing that the awareness, the general awareness of the benefits is missing. I read a beautiful study from Brno University. What is the most often indicator of climate changes? Ozone layer. It's a bullshit. If people don't know the causes, how they can deal with it. Then the second perspective. It is perceived as a high standard of living or an entertainment for volunteers. This is the awareness we have to work with. Another thing related to it, that governments or municipalities do not have successful data and useful data. Do you have the data when you do the research? Do you process the data in the research? Do you evaluate them? This is the most crucial question. And there's a second response. You already heard it. There are no standards established. When we have the data, we can promote the standards in another sector, but we cannot say that whether the standards in terms of the impact on the human heat islands are okay. It's just a feeling and it cannot be measured. Let's go on. It's up to the resilient volunteers who will survive. So if we want to stop this chaos that is all around it, if we want to stop it and want to change it into a good practice, we need complex data that must be evaluated. Then We can do the standards, make standards, and they need to be monitored all the time. When we create standards in 2022, it doesn't mean that they will be valid in 3 years period. The climate change doesn't stop. You cannot stop it. Data from 5 years ago are not useful today. So we have to start to use the cognitive thinking and stop using feelings. So this is the basis for all we have to do. Let's look at a brief summary of complex data and evaluation and the condition and current stage. You have an opportunity to gain information directly on NASA website. You can see some satellite images through infrared cameras, and you can get information about the heat islands, but you cannot have any feedback whether it was raining yesterday and so on. So this information really in principle changes the perspective. For example, in this picture here, there's a location where I live in, and you can see here some yellow surfaces that are the hottest in summer. And all these surfaces are roofs, and it's a total hell. It absorbs the heat and then it releases it. All the orange areas are roads or build-up areas using concrete. When you look at the dark surfaces, it's green. It's the greenery, the beautiful effect that nature provides you. It's the air conditioning effect. So this is the look on Bratislava, the view. If you want to focus on a particular part of the city, you have to look at the climatic data to evaluate it. What do? You call the Slovak Hydrometeorological Institute. There are no publicly available data. There is a written email application. You require data, and within 30 days, some climate expert just provides you with the data. The data exists in digital version, so we use someone who will use the PC to provide you with this information. This is a total archaic era. Bratislava lacks climate stations. We have just 5 of them. So when there's a rain in Nové Mesto district, the other part of the city is sunny. And the Slovak Hydrometeorological Institute says, it can be like that, but I don't want your feeling. I want the strict data. The measurements are not done on some expert devices, but by hand, we can say. The measurements can be done totally differently. When you go to the data of the institute, that you find out that it's really wrong. One of the data says that we have some periods here where we have 750 millimeters of precipitations per year. And here we have some periods that during one day it's 10% annual precipitation rate. You can start dealing with the proposals, how much water you want to retain. So there's a question, how what's the volume of the retention tank? Is it enough or not? So this is the hell. Let's look at a very important document. From the very beginning, we are talking about an impact of urban heat islands and the impact on 57% of apartment buildings. Here we have the Ministry of the Transport and Construction. There was a renewal plan as a strategic document for a long-term strategy of the renewal of this housing share. I took only apartment buildings out of this plan. There are two objectives: to reduce power consumption and emissions. So I found out that this strategy in 2020, in December 2020, it counts with emissions that were reported in 2016. In 2016, there was a methodology implemented from ECC assessment report that even wasn't valid in 2019. You can just throw it to the dustbin. How you want to monitor something that is even not valid within 2 years? What standard you can face? So it's another hell, and it's not everything. I looked at it and I found out that the power consumption is 5.1 terawatt hour. There was also a carbon emission factor. It means how many CO2 you produce for the value of power. And it was 0.167 ton per megawatt hour. So then you can say how much emissions were produced in this housing share. The problem is, however, the carbon emission factor doesn't come from the source, but a think tank that provided it. When I saw it, is this strategy? It's not a strategy, it's a document. But the problem is that the one who knows the figures and realizes that the emission factor is quite high in Slovakia. Let's go on. An expert who has a know-how contacts a national emission authority. In our case, it's a Slovak Hydrometeorological Institute. And thanks God, this authority has a publicly accessible information on emissions and emission factors. And you find out that in 2020, in this segment, there was just 0.53 megatons of CO2 produced, not 0.87. Oh, we won, we just saved 38% of emissions, so we should celebrate. But it is the problem, because the data are not correct. Because if 0.53 are valid, but we would produce a lower amount of power. That's why we have IPCC. That's why we have specific guidelines where we should extract the data from. An emission factor. No one is following it. Why? Because we have a chaos. There are no standards. When you look at the direct source about the energy production in Slovakia per year, you find out that in two sectors, it's gas industry and other fossil fuels. The brown and black one on the graph, it produces emissions, and you can see that there was 1.64 megatons of CO2. So it's almost 4 times less than as the strategy states. This should serve as a long-term strategy for renewal of housing rate, 57% of the Slovak housing rate. So I come across such documents very commonly. With these documents, with these figures, are the basis for people who don't understand them, and it's a great issue. Let's go on. You definitely know a website that provides great graphs. That provides nice graphs, but very incorrect information and data. The figures are totally different. This is all wrong. What can we do with it? As the science is not exact, based on unexact data, we create unexact conclusions. And it is the base for the problem that we create measures that cannot be monitored. How to do it better? I will talk about the project, an ongoing project, and it should create standards to eliminate urban heat islands. It's a pilot project. This is a challenge for me. It could be used in every location in Central and Eastern Europe. I think that it cannot be used in SIPA, but in 95% of this location. How do we want to eliminate of the urban heat islands? Not like this. These are people who are taking care of the greenery, and the quality is not so good. So we have to cancel this. So it means that it should be maintained by someone who is keen on maintaining greenery. So we are dividing the cities into blocks, 30,000 meters square or 20,000 meters square. The study should define the best division. These blocks will have their private gardener. So this is the private care who will not be responsible to the city, but to the block. And this is the change of the whole concept that is currently being produced. It means the blocks themselves will be engaged, and they will bear the costs. Suddenly, you are given a greenery that creates the natural climate. This must be, of course, completed at the level of municipalities, that they can take care of the greenery of the blocks. So it means that everybody can do something for it, but we have to start first. The second thing, don't forget about the green roofs, so that the roofs stop being like this, so that the roofs that are over 4 million meters square in Slovakia, I'm still talking about apartment buildings, so that the roofs can look totally different than today. There are also municipal and government buildings that are many of them. In 1986, new buildings that are not used for housing were built up within 2012 to 2019. And so the roofs can look like this, and it's not a utopia. 2.7 billion potential. Who will pay it? Let's look at a simple mathematics. In the last programming period, up to 2020, we had 16.68 billions available. How much we spent? It's a very sad story. Let's do something. Then it's not just 58% by 2027, but some reasonable and meaningful figures. We have an opportunity to make green roofs on the 4 million meter square of existing surfaces and reduce the CO2 per year. So we can change the situation. Irrigation, stop the water draining. It cannot drain to the sewerage system even after 24 hours. No, zero. How we will change it? Really simply. Let's take care of the water. In our project, there are 500 meters square of roof. The parking around is over 1,000 meters square, 250 meter square of sidewalks, and 750 millimeters of annual precipitations. We can retain almost 1,400 meters square of water per year, but if you divide it, it's 11 liters you can use per meter square during 250 days per year. It is quite a lot of water, isn't it? And you can forget that it's quite hot today. You cannot use the public water. So this is the solution. These are the data. Stop talking about the feelings. Start being serious. Because if you look at the potential, I can talk about the potential. Throughout 10 years, in this method, when we talk about this 4 million meter square, we can take 22 millions of meters cubic of rainwater for the water. You don't need to pay for draining it into the sewerage system because the water costs much money. If you figure out 8,865 Olympic swimming pools, they can be full of water for free, and you pay 27 million euros as water waste cost. Even a half of the water that is drained, can be used for irrigation, because there are some nice projects that you can use, some new systems for containers storage. There can be a flood. You just use the water from the building and water the roof, but it is quite costly. It will be 14 millions more. No, we don't want this. Let's change it. And of course, do not forget about photovoltaic panels. I have a research completed that 95 kilowatt hour is a share per apartment that defines the consumption per lifts and lights in these buildings. If you put it into a big calculator, we are talking about 85 gigawatt hours annually that cannot be produced by gas. It's 14% of photovoltaic production of Slovakia. It's a huge number. And it cannot be founded on a challenge that was finished within 3 seconds because we are out of money. We have to fight the climate change, not the lag of 3 seconds. We are talking about other 17,000 tons of CO2 that can be cancelled. And logically, we have to incorporate research inside from the point of experts, and we have to put the data outside to be open, publicly accessible. And we can do something about it. And what's the current stage of our project? There are some drivers and goals that were defined at the beginning of the project. One of it, that we need a complex measurement on the particular site. We use not only scientific measurements, but we want to use also the measurements that will be provided or done on the greenery. We will create complex data, on-site data, and from the current methods we use a model for the evaluation of the data. And we invite also academics sector to this. We want to create a model that would define a prediction model that would predict each layer of the covering. We will look at individual layers of thermal isolation, hydro isolation, to say, do we really need to use specific boards in a specific substrate, or a specific measurements of the boards, etc. So we can save millions and millions euros. It's only about measuring and evaluation. We want to create simple and useful standards so that everybody can read them, and you don't need to be an expert. What is important, we will be able to calculate also the impact of the emission reduction. We are counting with at least 10-year period of measuring and evaluation. We will have the data every day, and we want to use them for investors, developers, vendors of individual parts. We want to help them and provide them to architects and municipal and government sector and academic sector for research. So this is our aim. Currently, we are in the preparation of the project. We want to finish the project by December, and it will define all these circumstances. First, locality is Nasza Sibirska. There are two surfaces, the rooftop and the green surface, and it's up to 10,000 meters square. We fulfill the conditions. After the adjustment of the roof, we will have a load capacity of 300 kilos. We will use 24 centimeters height of the substrate. So it is possible. And it is even possible with 50-year-old buildings. It is possible. This is the right answer. We have a sufficient share of greenery and build-up area. So there is not just a build-up area or just a green area, but we can measure information and compare them from both parts. We have a Slovak average in terms of precipitations. It's great. There is no extreme location. There is also an average potential of photovoltaics, how much energy we can produce. And we also have a sufficient number of points that can be measured. It's necessary if we want to do it well. And we also started cooperation. We are promoted by or supported by Nové Mesto Bratislava City District. So this is the way how to do it good. And we also cooperate with Slovak Technical University and Bratislava and Technical University of Košice. So we are working with people who are real experts. It's not a one-man show. It's a great project that we want to finish. I want to invite to the project all of you who can contribute. You are all welcome. We will do microclimatic measurements and everything I was talking about. And this is how the roof on a 50-year-old building can look like. This is not a fantasy. In 2024, I invite you for the tour. We want to make this in Slovakia. 57% of the apartment building share is really worth it. So to sum it up, it's a great opportunity not only for the government ministries but also for the municipalities. We will reduce emissions, we will save water, and we will reduce the impacts of urban heat islands, and that's all corresponding to the Green Deal made by the European Commission. It's a great opportunity also for the developers and investors. 2.7 billion is not so low amount of money. What everything we want to do. 3 billions of European trees we should plant by 2030 means that we planted 6 millions. We will manage it in 450 years, not by 2050. Is it a chance for the planet? No, I think that it's not. I think that the planet went through much greater disasters, but it's the opportunity for us, for our children. Thank you very much.